Hello, welcome back to another episode of Brave Purpose. My name is Anisa Wesley. I am your host for today. And today we're going to be discussing fear in four different categories. But we're going to start with one because podcast is usually only 10 minutes. I try to keep it that way to keep it easy to listen to. But we're talking about the fight response, and what that means. And we'll be going through all four of the responses. So I hope you're tuning in for the next 4 weeks as we dive into this. But for today, we're talking about fight. Now, first, I want to address trauma, because what is trauma even, right? Trauma is something that happens to someone and they perceive it as trauma. They perceive it as something that was unsafe for them, that was possibly life-threatening, that they now are having these responses after the fact of that experience. So it could be something someone else would consider small. It could be something people would call big, like natural disasters or, physical, sexual, emotional abuse. So just keep that in mind as we're listening. There's something called little t trauma, which are typically the things that are a little smaller. And then there's big T trauma, which is a bigger thing, right? It's something that it takes a longer time to really fully, one, understand and heal from. But we also, because we're talking about living out our purpose bravely and living out our faith bravely as Christians, we are not only limited, I'll say that, we're not limited to the tools that the world gives, right? We have access to the healer, right? God is the healer. And so as a therapist, although I'm facilitating a lot of conversations, and I believe God has gifted me to be able to get some things out of people and to be able to counsel them and help them heal and get to a better place of living in their life, the Holy Spirit facilitates that. The Holy Spirit gives me what to say and what not to say, okay? Because sometimes you just don't need to say some certain things. Some of y'all need to learn the spirit of be quiet, but for real. And I think that helps, but just being able to recognize that trauma is not always something that someone else will perceive as traumatic, right? So if it is traumatic to the person, then it's traumatic to the person. If it's not traumatic to the person, even if you are convinced that this was a trauma for that person, if they don't perceive it as trauma, then it wasn't trauma. And that's kind of how it works. Now, will it affect the person? Will some of our experience affect us and impact our choices? Yes. But the main thing with trauma is it has to do with the one's perception of an event. Okay? So now that we've kind of covered that a little bit, which, I mean, I could talk several weeks about just trauma alone. However, I won't. Not in this podcast anyway. I mean, I am talking about it in regard to the trauma responses, but not trauma in itself. So what I want for you to remember is that if you're experiencing some of these responses, that it is okay to go look for help in regard to going to therapy and maybe finding a counselor at church, finding someone who can help you and support you to be able to work through some of these feelings, right? Excuse me. This podcast is not, gonna do it. It's only 10 minutes an episode. It's not gonna help you completely recover from trauma, but it can inform you so that you can then take the next step, right? I wrote a whole book on this, and the book helps a little bit more. So you can go get the book as well, but I strongly urge you to go and get actual, tangible assistance from someone who is licensed to do that. Okay? So, fight, right? So, this is where we put our dukes up and we square up. No, but fight response literally means when someone has the strong reaction to want to fight or stand their ground, right? They're standing their ground, they're wanting to protect, they're wanting to fight, they're wanting to become aggressive, they are wanting to take action in order to solve the issue, whatever's going on, the perceived danger. They're wanting to take action, they're wanting to fight, they're not wanting to retreat, which is something we'll talk more about in a different episode that has to do with flight, right? So, but when you're having the fight response, your knee-jerk reaction, I'll say it that way, your innate response is to want to protect, want to fight. A lot of times, a person who is in a trauma response of fight, and they have been in that fear response for a long time, they typically become offended really quick and they become defensive very quickly. So they are always on guard. They always feel like they have to defend themselves. They always feel like someone is out to get them. They always feel like they just can't trust people, and they have to protect themselves at all costs. We call this trust issues, right? So reminding yourself that if you are constantly feeling offended or defensive, that you might be living in a trauma response, in a defense mechanism that you feel, even though you're no longer in that traumatic experience, you've moved on from it, it hasn't happened to you in several years, but your body has stayed in that response because you never got a chance to heal from that trauma. So everything feels like you have to be in fight mode, right? Now, how do you heal from that? Again, like I said, you can, one, recognize that you have this response. Recognize what triggers you. And is it a certain person? Is it a certain situation that you feel unsafe in, and now you're feeling more aggressive than normal, or you're feeling defensive, and all the person did was say hi, but in your mind you perceive them saying hi as saying hi, and that is just not what they said. They didn't say that. You misinterpreted it, you became offended, and you're now having your defenses up and you're in fight mode, right? And we can attribute this spiritually as well, because sometimes having a fight response is necessary. Where the Bible tells us that we are in warfare, right? We're in spiritual warfare against the enemy, and so there are certain things that we have to fight back against. A war is not something that you sit idly and watch, your tail get whooped. It is something that you're actively engaged in. Now, we're not physically fighting, because the weapons of our warfare, they're not carnal, they're not physical, but they are mighty, right? They're spiritual strongholds. They're spiritual weapons. If you want to know more about those types of weapons, you can read Ephesians 6 in the Bible, and learn more about how to fight spiritually. But so I don't want to say that having a fight response is always bad, and I don't even think that the response itself is bad. However, sometimes when you're outside of that realm of when it's no longer unsafe, then it has become unhealthy, and you have to find a different way to respond to that trauma, right? A different way that is more healthy for your body. You don't want to be in a constant state of cortisol, and that is a stress hormone. We've talked about that before. It's a cortisol. It's constantly stressed, so it's released during stress, but yeah, that's what I want to share today about fight response. And I will also share with you two ways that you can calm your body down if you do feel like you're in a fight response. Take some deep breaths. We've practiced that before. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let's in, out. Right? That gives you time to oxygenate your blood. Your brain is starting to get air back in it as well, getting things flowing so that you can make a better decision in that moment. Also, with fight, I think it's a good idea to take a step away from the situation. Take a step away, take a break from the situation, go on a walk, do something physical to burn off some of that cortisol, because you're wanting to have a physical response, right? You're wanting to actually stand your ground. So do something physical to help you with that. Now, if you want more tips, I'll give more at the end of each episode. That is about one of the fear responses, and you can use them to help you with those responses. But remember, if you're still struggling with that, please, again, I beg you, please go get some mental health assistance. You can call 988 if you're having an emergency, or you can reach out to me, and I can connect you with some resources as well. But thank you for watching today. Learning about yourself, being more self-aware, learning about your trauma responses is a way that you are able to live bravely. Why? Because in order to live bravely, you have to have nothing hindering you. You have to have no obstacles in your way. And I believe that trauma can be an obstacle. It can be a roadblock. So when we get rid of those roadblocks, we're able to see clearly and live out the purpose that God has for us. Because if we get into our full purpose and then, we have this trauma response in the arena that God has called us in, that can really mess up what God is trying to do in our lives, right? And we just don't want to do that. So let's heal now, right? Get the help that we need now and recognize it now, because sometimes you'll be living in this response for so long. You're carrying the trauma for so long that you don't even realize that what you're doing is a trauma response. So I think what I really want for people watching this to do is to do some self-inventory, some self-evaluation to make sure that you're not living in a trauma response. So I look forward to the next episode, where I'm going to be talking about flight, and we'll continue to go on with this. This is a little longer than I thought it would be, but it's okay. It's good information. Please make sure that you like this video, that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and that you share it with somebody who needs it, who needs this information. All right? And I hope this encourages you to continue to live your life bravely.